board to write and draw certain things. Now, I'll talk about it in 3 broad points. The main topic I'm going to discuss is about how to deal with attachments. And we'll be focusing on Hanuman's journey to Lanka and what we can learn from that. So in general, I'll take in 3 parts. I've been taking this as a 3-part series over various sessions. So basically, in many ways, the Ramayana is not just a itihas. It is the opposite itihas. But itihas is actually, okay, let me start with the 3 parts I'll be taking. I'll be taking about the approach that we are going to talk about today. Then we'll talk about the 2 of the obstacles that he faced. Does anyone know there are 4 obstacles that Hanuman faced on his way to Lanka? Anyone know the obstacles? Sorry? Yeah? Mainaka mountain was the first one. Surasa, Lankini, and one more was Simhika. Yes, thank you. So we will be discussing about Simhika and Lankini and what they represent and how the way Hanuman dealt with them can help us deal with the things that hold us back in our lives. So the approach to the Ramayana, see basically the Ramayana is itihas, but itihas is not the same as history. Many people think of itihas means history. Well, it is true, but here I am using the word history in the sense of the modern way it is used. Often, modern study of history is primarily focused on dates and events, or rather, you could say dates and figures. Events is essential to history. But itihas is focused more on values and principles. That the Puranas and the Itihasa, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, they may also have numbers. This army was this strong and this king lived for this age. But that is not the primary focus. The primary focus is we don't study the past just to get information. We want to study the past to inspire transformation. There's one contemporary historian, he said that the main thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. What he meant that is that humanity is vulnerable to the same pitfalls, weaknesses, vices again and again. But now one reason for that, yes, we are all vulnerable. But one reason why we don't learn is often the focus is too much on information and not so much on values and principles that can be learned. So in the approach to scripture, which the tradition uses, then they are putting, the main thing is the wisdom, it's not just the information. So people ask, okay, when exactly was the Ramayana written? When exactly was the Mahabharata written? When exactly did the events happen? These are important questions and research can answer those questions. But there are 2 distinct things. There is putting a date on wisdom. Okay, this is when it happened. That is important, but much more important is going on a date with wisdom. Going on a date with wisdom means you want to fall in love with the wisdom. You want to learn the wisdom and apply that wisdom in our lives. So the research about historicity and facts and figures, that's not primarily important. So there is the question, who is Ravan? That's an important question. But an even more important question is, what is Ravan? Ravan represents a mentality. And that mentality is present within us even now. And it is that mentality that we need to learn how to purify ourselves. So the values and principles are much more important than the specific details. The specific details are undoubtedly important, but the values are even more important. So we will be focusing on this approach, this is a whole session in itself, I won't go into it. But the Ramayana can be approached at 4 different levels. We can approach it at literal level, we can approach it at the ethical level, we can approach it at the allegorical level, we can approach it at a devotional level. At a literal level, a person just focuses on the story, an entertaining story. But the problem with it is, once you have heard the story, then you get bored and want some new story. That's why when there are movie reviews, they say spoiler alerts. Because if you know the story, it's spoiled for you. So, the ethical level is where we look at lessons. We look at the characters, what choices they made, and we try to learn. What is it? In this situation, this person chose this action. What action would I have chosen? Why did they choose this? How can I learn from it? So, the literal level, the primary focus is entertainment. At the ethical level, the primary focus is guidance for decision making. At the allegorical level, now the scripture themselves is not allegory. Allegory is basically a story told to teach some values. So the scriptures are not allegorical, they may contain some allegories. But there are some things in the scripture which represent something else. Like I said, Ravan represents the selfish lust, or the lust that refuses the boundaries. So at the allegorical level, we get intellectual illuminations. We get deeper understanding of the truths of life. At the devotional level, there is ecstasy. That a person just, at the devotional level means, this is just the Leela of the Lord. I just want to enjoy. This is what happened. Enjoy in a transcendental sense. Now all these levels can give purification. That all of these levels, if we approach the Lord in any way, it gives purification. But there are different approaches which serve different purposes. So, we will focus on these 2 purposes. Bhakti Thakur says, especially the Madhyamadhikari, the intermediate level devotee, can benefit the most from the ethical and the allegorical approaches. So, now let's move forward. So, Hanuman had been deputed the mission to go to Lanka to find Sita. Actually, Hanuman was one of the leaders of the group that had been sent south. So basically, when Sugriv became the king, at that time, there were many Vanaras who came from all over the world. But there had just been a power struggle. That Vali had been the king and Sugriv had just now become the king. So, Vali had been persecuting Sugriv before that. So now, at that time Sugriv had been running here and there, and many of the Vanaras in different places, they had been used by Vali in his attempt to assassinate Sugriv. So now the person whom the Vanaras had tried to assassinate had now become their king. So there's a lot of tension over there. So when Sugriv called them on, they were faithful to the king, whoever was the king. But you can say, I always follow orders. But it's also important who is giving the orders, what are the orders being given. So they were a little apprehensive. Will Sugriv try to get back at us? But they had nothing against Sugriv, they only following the orders of the king. And they had been told that, Vali had told them that Sugriv had tried to overthrow him and have him killed. So anyway, all the power struggles had been going on. And when the Vanaras came, all of them, see whenever say if somebody is in government and a new politician comes as a leader, then everybody wants to be in the good books of the politician. So that they can get off on the right foot, not on the wrong foot. But here, now Sugriv also from his side was a little tense. Because whom can he really trust? Now, if somebody has been betrayed by someone as close to them like their own brother, then it creates lifelong scars. So now he wanted to trust. But still, when he had to go, when he was sending a search party, the direction in which Sita was most likely to be found was the southern direction. Because that's where they had seen Ravan go. And they had heard from various sources that Ravan's kingdom is somewhere in the south. So therefore he decided that in the search party going to the south would be the people who had stuck with him, whom he trusted. And Jambavan and Hanuman were two such people. So both of them he put in the party going southwards. Now on top of that, whenever somebody is in a leadership position, they always have to do a balancing act. So now Angad was a young prince. Now Sugriv also wanted to build a good relationship with him. Angad was a little suspicious. Did Sugriv cause the death of my father? And there was some tension. So he wanted to give him some leadership position. But then he was also young and inexperienced. So what Sugriv did was, he made Angad the leader of the group in which Hanuman and Jambavan were there. And then they all went southward. Now, in many places, there is an appointed leader. And then there is a natural leader who emerges. There is authority by position, and there is authority by character. Somebody will be appointed a leader, and yes, they will be given some respect. But some people, just by their character, by their behavior, they have like influence without position. And that's how Hanuman emerged as the natural leader. So even before Jambavan reminded Hanuman of his powers, Hanuman was the person who, when they went deep into the cave of Swayamprabha, there Hanuman got them out of it. Hanuman resolved a potential conflict with Sampati. So Hanuman was actually becoming a leader. But then he comes into his own after Jambavan reminds him. So see, most people feel that if only I had more abilities, I can do so much more in life. If I were a better speaker, if I had a better manager, if I had a sharper memory, if I had better looks, if I had more education, somehow if people valued me more, then I could do so much more. So what happens is, we all want growth in our life. And we all feel that if I had more ability, if ability is more, my growth will be more. That is true. But what is equally, if not more important, is maturity. And maturity means the ability to use our ability. It can be many different things, but the ability to use our ability. So you remember Hanuman, as a child, had been cursed. He had many great powers, but he had been mischievous. So he had been cursed, so that he forgot all his powers. And now he had been reminded of those powers. So he had been cursed to forget his powers because he was misusing those powers. He was just being too mischievous. But Hanuman, in his journey to Lanka, even before his main mission, he faces various challenges. And those challenges reveal the evolution of his character. That he has developed the maturity to face challenges. So when the Mainak Parvat came along, and Mainak Parvat offered, please rest on me. He was very respectful and polite, but he refused. That was the topic we discussed, how to say no politely. That was the topic I discussed yesterday in the morning. Then after that, when he faced Surasa, she kept opening her mouth. And Hanuman kept becoming bigger and bigger, till finally he became small, went in and came out. So that was a theme where Hanuman exhibits humility. It was intelligent humility. One characteristic of a leader is the capacity to choose their battles. Just because I have power doesn't mean I should be fighting every fight. That there are times when we need to fight, and there is no need to fight at all. I don't have to. So Hanuman's focus was on pursuing his purpose, not on displaying his prowess. That's why he did not get caught with Surasa much. But now, his abilities, his ability to use his ability, we'll see how it is shown in the two last obstacles that he faces. Simhika and Surasa. Surasa? No, Lankini. Yes. So Now both of these represent attachments of different kinds. So Hanuman was speeding through the skyway. It was a majestic sight. Even the celestials were watching from behind. Hanuman had expanded himself to a giant form. And he had actually taken one forceful leap. And the momentum of the leap that was taking him forward. Some people thought he was like a bird who was flying without wings. But he was not flying, he was propelled by the power of his leap. And as he was flying, the celestial elements aligned in his favor. The wind god started blowing from behind him so that he would be getting relief from the heat of the sun while also getting a push from behind. Just like when somebody is rowing, the wind is behind them, it helps them. Above, the sun was pleased. The sun started becoming softer so that the heat was not unbearable. And the birds in the sky, they were watching it. What is this being? They had never seen anything like this. Speeding through spectacularly. As Hanuman was going forward, he was focused on one thing, getting to Lanka and finding Sita. Vyavasayatmika buddhi, ekeva purnandana. And as he was moving forward, it was a mighty effort and he was going with phenomenal speed. And suddenly, he felt as if he was not moving at all. And he looked around and he was moving and nothing. He was not moving at all. He looked around, what's happening? He was using all his force and still he found that he just couldn't move. So normally when something happens that is out of the way, say if I am speaking right now and suddenly my audio drops, the first thing I could look is, okay, has this mic gone off somehow? The second thing I would look off is, has the sound system gone off somehow? Third point I would look is, probably, is this the way the organizer telling me to finish the class? So basically, when we are doing something, it doesn't make sense, we start putting things into bigger and bigger circles. A fourth possibility could be, I just lost my voice, maybe I got some attack or something like that. It's an unlikely explanation, but basically, when something happens, we try to look for bigger and bigger explanations. We try to put it, not bigger and bigger explanations, we try to put things in bigger context. So if an event happens, we first try to look for the immediate explanation. Okay, is the sound system off? Is the mic gone off over here? Is the sound system itself off? Like that we look for bigger and bigger explanation. So like that, Hanuman said, why am I not moving? He looked around and then he looked down. Finally, when he looked down, he saw there was a demoness over there. And that demoness was looking up at her and she was having a smirk on her face. And she had opened her mouth. And Hanuman realized that she had some mystical powers by which she was holding on to him. And he tried his fullest capacity, but he just could not move forward. And as he was watching and wondering what's happening, where is this power coming from? And the demon started bragging. He said, I have a blessing by which anyone who passes by this, I will catch them, I will take away their capacity to move, and then I will devour them. Now, Hanuman was concerned. He was completely paralyzed. It seemed all the powers that he had, they were still insufficient. Despite having all the powers, he tried exerting himself. There's no way. And then that demon started pulling him. Now she had caught him, she started pulling him to devour him. So Hanuman suddenly changed tack. See, one of the names, the prayers qualify Hanuman is Buddhimatam Varishtam, most intelligent. So when sometimes we are facing a problem and there's no solution, we just keep beating against the same thing again and again and again. No, I change that. What can I do different? So he preempted her, and she was trying to pull him down, and she was expecting that he will fight her and he had to exert a lot of force. But what happened? He himself used all his energy to rush downwards. Now she was using her mystical powers to prevent him from getting away. But what he did was, he just raced downwards, and he raced downwards so fast that before she could understand what's happening, he had entered into her mouth, and right through her mouth he went into her alimentary canal, into her belly. And she had sharp teeth, but Hanuman just dodged those teeth and went straight inside. And from within, he just used his full power from there, and he just burst out. And she had not expected it at all. She didn't know what to do. She had mystical powers here, but instead she was vulnerable. As he burst through, he came out. He came out, and the demoness fell back dead. And he marched ahead. So at one level, this seems to be interesting, maybe a dramatic story. But it also represents something. I'll come back to what this represents a little later, more in detail. But there are two different approaches. Later on, when he finally comes to Lanka, what happens is, he meets Lankini. And she says, nobody can go ahead, enter into Lanka without my permission. What does Hanuman do? Hanuman just uses one blow, she falls aside, and Hanuman bounds ahead. So there, Hanuman doesn't get involved in fighting and beating and trying to destroy her. So basically, our attachments can be of two different kinds broadly. There are deep-rooted attachments, and there are superficial or circumstantial attachments. Now the word before we talk, so basically Simhika represents deep-rooted attachments, and Lankini represents these more superficial attachments. Now before we move forward, let's try to understand what attachment means. It can mean many different things. At a simple level, it means things that hold us back. Attachment means things that hold us back. That we all are trying to do certain things in life, but we are often unable to do those things. So Oscar Wilde is a British playwright. He said, giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I have done it over 100 times. So I gave up smoking, but smoking didn't give me up. What other things hold us back? So for we all may have our attachments. We may have social media attachment, TV attachment, food attachment. Nowadays there is alcoholism, there is shopaholism. There's so much shopping, shop till you drop. Like that. So we all have different kinds of attachments, and these hold us back. We want to go in particular directions, we want to do particular things, but we are unable to do those things. Whether it is in our material life or in our spiritual life, when we want to progress, attachments can hold us back. So what are the ways to deal with attachments? So basically, let's start with Lankini. What did Hanuman do? Just knocked her aside. So for us, many of the things that we may be attached to, if we just make some external changes, we just get the temptations, the obstacles out of the way, we change our lifestyle and things change. So there are many desires that pop up, many cravings that are highly circumstantial. Say for example, if this is my office and this is my home, and say if along the way there is a bar, and suppose somebody is a recovering alcoholic, then Every time they pass by the bar, they get the urge, let's go and drink, let's go and drink, let's go and drink. And now, when this happens, they will have to resist that temptation. Generally what happens, when we come close to a tempting object, see, this is the conditioned soul, and this is a tempting object. Then, many tempting objects, they pull us downwards. They have almost like a gravity pull. So just as, if I consider this phone, if I let go of this phone, I won't. But if I let go of this phone, what is going to happen? This fall. Why? Because there's gravity. Now that's just to be expected. It's unpleasant if a phone falls, but it is not unexpected. That's what is going to happen. So like that, we all have certain objects that we have indulged in the past. When you indulge in those objects, naturally, whenever we come in the vicinity of those objects, then they will have a pull on us, and they will pull us downwards, pull us toward them. So at such times, what we need to do is just create a distance. So create some kind of barrier. This color is visible?
Yeah.
So create some kind of barrier. So Krishna says, Tasmatvam indriyanya adav. 3.41 he says that we need to regulate our senses, create some barriers or boundaries between us and those tempting objects. So if somebody is a recovering alcoholic and they pass by a bar, then every day when they pass by the bar, the temptation will come. They have to fight with the temptation. So what happens is they have to create some distance. If they don't create that distance, then there will be no bar for them to go to the bar. Isn't it? So what they have to do is, maybe you cannot push the bar aside literally. That is not practically possible. But maybe you find another way. Maybe a little more troublesome. But avoid the bar. So for many temptations, basically out of sight is out of mind. So there are superficial desires we have like that. It's only when we come to those desires that we get caught in them. So Hanuman's approach with Lankini was just push her out of the way. So if you just create a distance, we create a barrier, a boundary, then that goes away. And out of sight is out of mind. So one of the approaches we use in Bhakti is keep yourself busy. So basically, sometimes we cannot get things out of sight completely, but we don't have to leave our sight unmonitored. If we are busy, say if we are going on a crowded road, straight ahead, even if there is a bar on the side of the road, we won't even have time to notice it because we are navigating the traffic. Isn't it? So if we keep ourselves busy, and engaged, then that itself protects us. But there are some attachments which seem to be so strong that this approach just doesn't work. Sometimes something goes out of sight, it seems to rise more in the mind. Like they say, separation makes the heart grow fonder. Isn't it? It's like sometimes we abstain from something, say, okay, I'm not going to watch this TV show, I'm not going to eat this food, I'm not going to go to this. And it seems that desire seems to become stronger and stronger. And it becomes so strong, it's almost as if we feel paralyzed. That I can't do anything at all. I need this, I have to get this, I cannot be without this. So that's the other kind of attachment. That's what Simhika represents. Sometimes some attachments, actually Simhika was already out of sight. So basically, to take this a little more complicated, I'll make it complicated, I'll make it simpler. So there is the soul, then there is the mind, then there is the body, and all of these together is the conditioned soul. And say here in the outer world, there are some tempting objects. So basically, sometimes when the desires come up within us, some desires, they primarily come from outside in. If you see something, hey, that's nice, I want to have it. But there are some other desires which are already stored inside us as impressions. So these impressions in Sanskrit are called as samskar. Now samskar, you can put this in English as samskar. Everybody has some or the other scar to their psyche. And what happens is, when these samskars are there inside us, then the desires seem to rise from inside, even if there is no object. Like sometimes somebody sees a bar and they go and drink there. But sometimes some people, they're talking with their boss in office and suddenly their boss body changes into a bottle of alcohol. In their mind's eye. And they have to go and drink. So sometimes there are attachments inside us. And when the impressions, the samskaras that are inside us, they pull us in the outside direction. So when this is happening, at that time, just we knock the temptation out of our way. That approach doesn't work because the temptation, the impression is still there inside us. So at that time, what did Hanuman do? He went straight inside. Straight inside means that we have to go inwards. We consider there is the surface. If we consider the self is multi-level. At the surface level, there is some unhealthy craving. Say somebody has a craving to drink a lot. Somebody has a craving to shop a lot. Some people just have a craving to hoard a lot of things, to splurge. So everybody has different kinds of cravings, urges. So now when this happens, so just don't do it. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of time. We may understand it, but still it keeps happening. So what is going on over here is, often every unhealthy craving, it arises within from some healthy need. There is a healthy need which becomes distorted as an unhealthy craving. So we need to go inward to understand what a healthy need is. So like what Hanuman did was, he went inside Surasa. Surasa? No, Simhika. Went inside Simhika and from there he dealt with it. So what does this mean? I'll take two examples and then we'll open for question and answers. So consider, suppose somebody is an alcoholic. Now some people may be drinking alcohol because they are primarily social drinkers. That means maybe everybody in their social circle drinks. They go to office, they go to college, they all want to be a cool person. So many of the things which we do to be cool make us a fool, unfortunately. But so that's the reason. Now if they come to a spiritual community where nobody drinks, and now for belonging to the spiritual community, they don't need to drink, they need to give drinking. And such people, if their underlying need was mostly a sense of belonging, then once they come into a spiritual community, they just give up drinking immediately. They won't have any struggle about it. But somebody else might be an alcoholic because they are bored, because they are insecure, because they feel stressed. And this alcohol is their coping mechanism. So now what may happen is, if this is their underlying healthy need, then even if they come to a spiritual community, still there are times they may feel bored, still there are times they may feel insecure. As devotees, we come together and say, we find, okay, this person is doing more austerity than me, this person is doing more seva than me. That may make us feel insecure. Or sometimes life is tough. Just because we are practicing bhakti doesn't mean there are no going to be troubles in our life. So if that is our coping mechanism, then just say, don't drink. That won't be enough. You may chant Hare Krishna also, and it's good, important to chant Hare Krishna, practice bhakti, no doubt. But that alone may not seem to lead to change. And we start thinking, what's happening? What's wrong with me? Is it that bhakti doesn't work at all, or bhakti doesn't work for me? Am I peculiarly, uniquely fallen that bhakti doesn't work for me? It's not like that. Now, we need to do some inner work to understand what is that inner need. And when I am doing this particular activity, why am I doing this activity? Krishna says, Uddared atmanatmanam natmanam avasade. Krishna says, we have to observe ourselves so that we can elevate ourselves. So if I am here, like I can look at myself from above. Almost we can raise ourselves, and during times of say self-observation, introspection, antanirikshan, they call it journaling, we do some introspection, observe ourselves. Okay, when I indulge in this particular thing, what goes on in my mind? What am I thinking? Why am I doing this? So when we go deeper and we address that underlying need, okay, I may find that, I like kirtans. And when we come to temple, we like kirtans, and that's wonderful. But we find, when I hear kirtans, I feel very soothing, I feel very comforted. Then maybe what I need to do is, whenever I feel stressed, whenever I feel insecure, whenever I feel depressed, whenever I feel bored, maybe I should have some kirtan ready. And let me start hearing the kirtan. That's why a one-size-fits-all formula may not work for everyone. You can just chant Hare Krishna. Now we start taking and doing japa, and it may help for some people. It helps ultimately for everyone. But intermediately, it may not help for everyone. So for somebody, it might be kirtans. For somebody, they might just like, okay, I have my deities, and I start decorating the deities, and I just feel so good about it. And that calms me down. Somebody else may take a book and start reading a book. You may say, okay, I just go out for a walk and I pray while I'm in nature, and that helps me calm down. So what is a healthier way? What is the need, and what is the healthier way I can address that need? So now, at an ultimate level, if we go backwards over here, that a healthy need, there is a need at a psychological level. See, inside us, there is the body, there is the mind, and ultimately the soul. At the spiritual level, the healthy need ultimately for all of us is Krishna. And once we get Krishna, we won't need anything else. But sometimes the psychological troubles may be so much that even if Krishna is available, we may not be able to benefit from Krishna. How is that possible? It's like sometimes when a patient has been severely wounded, then their whole body is in a state of shock. And if you give them curative medication, their body is just in such a defensive posture. At first, you have to give them some pain medication so that the body comes out of the defensive posture. And then the curative medication will work. So like that, remembrance of Krishna and love for Krishna is the ultimate curative medication. Our deepest need ultimately is for Krishna. It is when we come to Krishna that, just like Hanuman ripped Simhika apart from inside, we can rip all our attachments apart from inside. But the Bhakti culture, see, Bhakti is not just about remembrance of Krishna. Bhakti is about a culture. And the culture is also meant to address various needs. So in the culture there is music, there is decoration, there are relationships. So whatever is our psychological need also, that can also be taken care of by the Bhakti culture. So these deeper needs, Bhakti is centered on remembrance of Krishna, and this addresses our spiritual need. But the Bhakti culture doesn't just mean one thing, wear a particular kind of dress or put on a tilak. Well, those are important things. But Bhakti culture essentially means it's an encompassing way of living. So it's an encompassing way of living. So in the Bhakti culture, one important point is Guhyam Akhyati Pruchyate. We need to have close friends with whom we can open our heart. And then something is burdening our heart, we talk with them. We share our heart. And then whatever is burdening us, that burden goes away. So various needs can be addressed within the Bhakti culture. When that happens, then we'll find that gradually, for Hanuman, it happened in one moment that he just broke the stomach of Simhika and he came out. In our case, it may take some time. But if we keep addressing the deeper needs, the surface desires will gradually start becoming weaker. And in that way, whatever it is that is holding us back, we can get rid of it. So for us, the most important thing is, in our focus is not what holds us back. Sometimes we become too obsessed. I'm not able to give this up. I'm not able to give that up. But focus should be us what we can hold on to. So what negative holds us back, but rather what positive we can hold on to. Okay, when I am very distressed, maybe I cannot chant. Maybe I can recite some verses. Maybe I can hear some classes. Maybe I can do some puja. Maybe I can do some seva. So what positive can I hold on to? This essentially is what Krishna recommends. Param drishtva nivartate. The higher taste comes when we hold on to the positive higher reality. And when this happens, Krishna says, that is when nivartate, we become peaceful, we become joyful. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. I talked about overcoming attachments based on the Ramayana. And I talked about three main points. First point was the approach that we have to give to this epic. We discussed how putting a date on history, you should not get too caught in the facts and in the numbers and figures. It's not date on history, date on, you remember?
Values and principles.
Date on wisdom. Put on date on wisdom. That's not as important as going on a date with wisdom. We want to fall in love with the wisdom, and the Lord has given us the wisdom. And we discussed 4 approaches. What are 4 approaches?
Literal,
ethical, allegorical, and devotional. So we took the ethical, allegorical approach, and then we discussed the 2 attachments. So one was, we'll go the other way. Lankini, what does she represent? Attachments that are superficial. So superficial or circumstantial. So what is the way to deal with them?
Change lifestyle.
Yes, just put a distance, create a distance. Get them out of the way. So out of sight leads to out of mind. And for many of our attachments, we'll find this will work. But for some, it will not work. And that is represented by Simhika. So here what happens is, whenever there is an unhealthy craving, what we need to do is go deeper, inward, to look at what is the healthy or natural need underlying. That need could be psychological, that could be spiritual. So when we go deeper and address that need, so once that underlying need is addressed, then this is more like an outside in approach. That we just change the outside and the inside agitation goes away. But this is more of a inside out approach. Both approaches are required. So inside out approach means what we do is we find out a healthier way to address our needs. So find out within bhakti a focus. It needed be on negative that holds on to us. We will too conscious of this. I'm not able to give this up. I'm not able to give that. But we focus more on positive that we can hold on to. So find out that positive, and by that each one of us can find a way to stay connected and to keep growing in our lives. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for wonderful insight from Ramayana. And now we'll keep the floor open for any question and answers anyone has.
Yes, please.
One second.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dhanurkha, answer beautiful discourse. Prabhu, I follow this person, his name is Robert Greene. He gives these podcasts on powers from the secular world. He talks about how, like, especially in the workplace, how you can make your adversaries your ally by not basically behaving like a baby. Instead of crying or instantly responding to everything, really saying, okay, if I react this way, it will create more conflict, versus if I react this way, I'll turn this adversary into an ally. So that reminded me of when Hanuman just does something very opposite to what was expected, just goes deeper instead of trying to maybe go in the opposite way. So can you just talk, I know you talked enough about that, can you just shed light on how that can be used as a way to get out of tricky situations perhaps at the workplace?
Okay. See, basically, whenever we face an obstacle, there are two ways, if you consider pendulum, two unhealthy ways of responding. It's blame others. Oh, this person is like this job itself is like this, these people are like this country is like this, blame others. But the other extreme is also blame ourselves. That, oh, I am worthless, maybe, so we start beating ourselves up. That is also not healthy. So we want, in between is something else. It's like taking responsibility. Taking responsibility means that basically, okay, this is the situation I am in. And the whole philosophy of karma is actually about assuring us that our actions matter. Now, karma is not so much about past centered. I don't know, okay, you have done all these things and therefore you have to suffer. That's not the point of karma. The point of karma is our actions matter, and therefore let us choose wisely. So our past actions matter, and they may constrain us in some ways now, but our present actions matter, and by those we can lessen some of the constraints that have come from our past, or we can increase those constraints. So taking responsibility could mean it's more like a objective analysis. Krishna says, Sattvat sanjayate jnanam. So, first of all, there is observation. What exactly is happening? Is this happening to me alone? Is this happening to everyone here? So, we observe, and then after that there is evaluation. Many times what happens is Rajoguna and Tamoguna, there is evaluation, especially in Tamoguna, there is evaluation before observations. That means what? Oh, this is a terrible person. Or, I am a terrible person. Very kismati phuti hai. My destiny is wrong. No, first observation, what actually happened? And try to find out a rational cause for understanding this. And then try to evaluate it. So this is basically Sattva-guna functioning. Blaming others is Rajoguna. Blaming ourselves is Tamoguna. I am putting it broad and simpler terms. But basically, we take responsibility. I am in this situation. Okay, what has put me in this situation and what can I do about this situation? So observe and evaluate. And then we can find ways. Sometimes it may be that, I am doing something, some mess, and because of this problem there. Sometimes it could also be the other person is the problem. And we have to decide, and can this other person can we talk with them? Will they change themselves? Do we go talk about to their authorities? Or this is not changeable, then do I live with this? Do I move somewhere else? There are various approaches that can be taken. But it's first observation, then evaluation. But what our mind does is, it jumps to an evaluation without adequate observation. And that's what is impulsive behavior. So observation to evaluation, this is reflective, this is thoughtful. But evaluation before observation. So this is where it becomes impulsive. And the impulsive can over time end up becoming destructive also. Okay? That's what we want to avoid. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chaitanya Charan. Thank you for this beautiful disclosure. I was just contemplating on the previous lecture yesterday night, where you actually talked about Sursa, where there was a pendulum, where there is ego and insecurity. Once, yeah. So I was just looking at it because when you actually draw this, so there was a side that the nature of the pendulum will be going back and forth, right?
Correct, yeah.
And the main thing is that in the middle we find the humility that we are something, not that we can put the God on the edge or have any security. So to actually come to the force of the gravity, can we always situate in the level of humility, because the nature will be always dwelling? And if it is, how to come back to the humility level?
Yeah,
Considering, because if we are extreme on the ego, very difficult to come to the part of humility. And if we are extremely on the insecurity, how we can actually drag ourselves to the level of humility? That's a struggle.
Yes. So yesterday I talked about the power of humility, where I mentioned that there is, so often we think of ego and humility as opposites, but actually the opposite of ego is insecurity. Ego is I can do everything, insecurity is I can't do anything. Humility is I am something, I'm a part of God, and I can play some parts. I can't do everything, but I can do some things. So generally speaking, yes, we will move in the different directions. That's the nature of the world. But over a period of time, if we observe, okay, this is the tendency I go more towards. Some people gravitate more towards ego. Some people will gravitate, say for example, going back to the previous diagram, say those with ego will keep blaming others. Those with insecurity issues will keep beating themselves up, for example. So once we observe, okay, this is my tendency, then we can create mechanisms for dealing with those tendencies. So for example, we could write down some quotes, find some scriptural verses, or write down some good thoughts, keep them with ourselves. And by that we can bring ourselves towards the center. So once to be forewarned is to be forearmed. So the tendencies themselves may not change, but our capacity to deal with those tendencies will change. So tendencies they will also change, but it will take time. See, like inside us, there is our buddhi, there is our intelligence, and there is our mind. So quite often both of these are there, but you could say that the intelligence is small and the mind is quite big, especially in the areas where we are attached. The emotions are very strong and the reason is very weak. So this is where we have attached, when we are attached to certain, we have certain tendencies. So now to get the mind to shrink in size is difficult. So often the first step out of here is that we can strengthen our intelligence. Our mind may not immediately become weaker because those impressions are there. So what will happen by this is, even if the tendency comes, we may sway in that direction, but we won't stay in that direction for that long. So we may stray away, but we won't stay away. We'll come back faster. And over a period of time, as the intelligence becomes stronger and the unhealthy tendency between the mind become weaker, then from there we can come to a level where the intelligence becomes stronger and the mind becomes weaker. So we can't, that's why I said, focus on what we can hold on to, not what holds on to us. So say wisdom, insights, inspiration, those are things which we can hold on to, and by that we can nourish our intelligence. So focus on strengthening our intelligence. This is much more possible for us. And the weakening of the mind, that will take its own time. It takes time. We cannot force that process. So often instead of strengthening our intelligence, we focus on trying to weaken the mind, and when the mind doesn't become weaker, then we beat ourselves up with guilt, and that creates further problems. Okay. So thank you very much. Please talk.
Hare Krishna. So we are running out of time. Prabhuji is around, so you can ask personally your question, right? Anyone who would like to ask that question. So to show our love